people don't really talk about the emotional side, what it does to your psyche enough. I think anytime you look up anything, it's just about how to get through the skills, how to get your kid to take the SATs or whatever that kind of stuff is, who to help your kid learn X, Y, and Z, or how to help you. How can you manage this, whatever you're.
Right. It's very academic focused.
Correct. I don't think anyone talks about the mental side of it enough. And I've actually looked for that.
I'm Jenny Scherson, ex-special educator turned dyslexia interventionist. It wasn't so long ago that I, too, was overwhelmed by balanced literacy versus structured literacy, education speak, and everything in between. Fast forward after many, many hours of self-driven education, and you'll see I've built a thriving dyslexia practice helping students from age 6 to 18. My specialties? Working with a quote-unquote difficult, almost always 2E, student, and breaking down the complexities of dyslexia into everyday language strategies and action steps. Many of you know that dyslexia and ADHD run in my family. Dyslexia has been part of my family for as long as I can remember. I can't even remember a world without dyslexia being a part of it. But I also don't directly experience it. My experiences have always been secondhand, which is why one of my earlier episodes, episode 5, and my first guest on the show was my dad. I wanted his voice to be heard. His is the voice of a man who didn't know he had dyslexia until one of his children was diagnosed with it. And even though he had struggles, he was and is a successful adult. Ever since we recorded that podcast, I wanted my sister's voice to be heard too. She's in the unique position of not only being a dyslexic, but also a daughter and a mother to other dyslexics. I don't tell her enough, but I think she is amazing, and I know you will too. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome my sister, Sara.
One of the reasons I wanted to interview her was because of her unique perspective on all of this. Every time I think about it, I think about the song Stuck in the Middle with You, because she is in the middle. She's a mom and she's a daughter and she's also a dyslexic. So she has a really rounded, unique point of view of what dyslexia is. Do you want to just introduce yourself really quick?
So in this regard, I am 46. I have dyslexia. They figured that out when I was second grade, I believe. And my son, one of my sons has dyslexia, as does our father.
And so what does dyslexia mean to you? Because you and I have talked about this. Dyslexia is different for everybody, how it takes place in their brain and how the symptoms and everything happen. What does it mean for you?
I guess it depends on what lens I'm looking at. If I'm looking at it from my son, then it's how are we supporting him and getting his needs met and helping him to thrive. I guess if I'm looking at it from myself, it's just a challenge.
In what ways?
I'm less aware of the ways that it's a challenge now because I've been using coping skills for so long. Sometimes academically or learning new skills feels like I'm pushing a rock up a mountain. It takes me longer to get to the same place as everybody else. But I'm so used to it now that just is what it is.
Does it make you hesitate sometimes before you
to try something new? Not so much in to try the new things, but in how I need to approach it or how much grace I need to give myself in not hitting the marks that everyone else is hitting or in the same time frame.
Okay, so you just kind of have to, in a sense, kind of game yourself or get yourself prepared.
Yeah, I do think there were periods where I was like, well, that's not something I could do or pursue, but that's less now. And it's more like I could do that. I just have to think of what skills I have that could work around the problems.
So I have 2 questions for that. What do you perceive your problems? Is it decoding? Is it writing? Is it...
I actually think I'm a good writer.
Yeah, I do too.
So no, I can't write freehand. I have to write on the computer.
So the physical handwriting.
Physical handwriting, stinkola. And then computer's fine because I can redo it a million times and I have my spell check. That would be, so handwriting, physical handwriting would be a challenge. I don't read fast. Nonfiction takes me a while to get through. Fiction I'm fine with, but nonfiction I really have to slow down. I do better listening to nonfiction than reading nonfiction.
Yeah, because you love all the audiobooks and all those things. Yeah.
Once I discovered audiobooks and podcasts, it was like I couldn't believe I could, in my passive time, meaning walking the dog, cleaning, I could learn all these new things that normally I would have to struggle to learn these new things.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just like a mind-blown experience once I figured that out.
Very cool. How has having a parent who also is dyslexic and found out at the same time as you been for you? Like, was it a support? Was it helpful? Was it?
Well, it was good insofar as like you could see that you could grow up and be a normal functioning adult.
Mm-hmm.
So that wasn't a surprise, I suppose. So that was good. And he was also supportive of the mind fuck that it gives you. So not feeling like you can do everything like everybody else or being capable. He was a great support system for that too.
I think he still is. I think you guys still have a connection in a way that he doesn't have with Katie and I.
Probably.
Because of this.
He was just telling me this morning about Cooper, my one that has dyslexia, and how he's listening to him talk and he's relating to what Cooper's saying.
Bingo last night. Right. They were both struggling with bingo and they were saying it's the same thing. They were trying to approach it the same way and having the same issue. And they're funny with that. So what's it been like parenting another dyslexic?
I guess I have been very like no bullshit. Like nobody can tell me what he does or doesn't need. I mean, obviously I've gone to the experts and I've gotten their opinions and taken that into consideration, but I won't listen to anybody who tells me it's mild or it's not mild or it's this, it's that. I just have to listen to him, look at him and what he's kind of work he's producing and where he's struggling. And then it's just, I don't care what's in my way. What he needs is what's happening. And I will scale any wall to make that happen.
So, and each of your children approached reading differently.
Yeah, so I have 3 kids, and number 1 and number 3, for lack of a better term, are somewhat gifted in learning and reading and writing and all that. Especially my youngest, who wanted to catch up, I guess, with her brothers.
She was adamant that she was going to read.
And still is a ferocious reader. So with Coop, I actually asked every single year, do you think he's dyslexic? Because I knew it's highly hereditary. Mm-hmm. Do you think he's, and every year they said, no. At one point we did on our own. We didn't get a diagnosis. We just did reading, somebody to help him, I guess a tutor. Mm-hmm. And that worked and that was great. And then he was reading and I was naive enough to think that as long as he was reading, we didn't need to get the full diagnosis and it was fine. But that caught up with us in middle school, in which case we needed to get accommodations.
And you can correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't the school kind of telling you it was more of a speech issue, like an articulation?
He has a stutter too. He got saddled with everything. He got the ADHD, the dyslexia, and the stutter. But yes, they recognized the stutter, but they did not recognize the dyslexia. And they were kind of hesitant on the ADHD too, because he's not typical boy ADHD. He's inattentive.
Yeah. Yep. So I think your experience with him is kind of a good example of where they focus on the speech and not realizing how it affects all the reading and the writing all the way through. Because let's be honest, Koopy has handwriting like you.
That's terrible.
Yeah. So I think they got stuck on that speech aspect with the stutter and they're like, oh no, they were focusing on that.
Well, every year he hit the standardized testing requirements. Okay. So he was never behind. The last year, 8th grade, is actually his math teacher that said something's a little off. Mm-hmm. That was when we went forward with the testing, and obviously nobody paid for that. So we had to figure out how to do all that. Mm-hmm. And then, because the school, we just went to public school, and so it wasn't extremely accommodating.
No, and they offered you a 504 instead of an IEP, correct?
Well, I had to go and balls out to get that 504, but yes.
Yeah, I remember you had to fight for the 504 itself. Not even
and
just
honestly, he would not have liked an IEP because he would not have wanted to have been pulled for extra instruction. So the 504 was fine, and we got our own dyslexia tutor who also did ADHD executive function.
Right. You had to do a lot outside of
we did.
The school. We did. And so did mom and dad, if I remember correctly, for
me.
You.
Yeah, I had resource room, and I also had the
Susan Santora.
Yeah, the lady from
Dad
talked about her
frequently. Yes. What do you think from your perspective? Because you've seen it at all the different age levels. You see how dad thinks about it. You see how Koopy thinks about it. And what do you think people, how they perceive dyslexia, or what do they get wrong about when they think about it?
Well, I think for most people, it's a joke. I don't mean a joke. Like, it's more like, oh, I'm having a dyslexic day.
Yeah, we had a cousin who used to say that. My dyslexia is acting out.
Yeah, okay. So that is mostly how I have heard it referred to in regular everyday life. Reading as a kid, I wasn't really reading until 5th grade. I mean, they did intervention, but I couldn't like sit down and like read a book age appropriate-ish until 5th grade. And even then, the colors were supposed to like mask, so kids didn't know where you were, but every kid knew what level you were on. And I couldn't get out of the beginning color. And I remember being real.
It's like a red or something.
Whatever it was.
Yeah.
Just not feeling great about that.
Did your friends in school know?
Oh, yeah. I think everybody knew. I had one friend who didn't like that it got me more attention and then tried to say for a while that she had it too. And I remember Mrs. Doan, our 3rd grade teacher.
I do remember Mrs. Doan.
Nipped that in the bud real fast. But yeah, everybody knew.
What about your friends now? Do you share it as often, or is it just kind of comes up?
Just as it comes up. I mean, my close friends will know because we went through all the stuff with Coop. And then I don't actually hide it. I don't have any shame about it. I don't care. I mean, internally, I have a lot of mixed feelings about it, but publicly.
But I don't think it's something that comes up in conversation in his life either, unless he's actually talking about the work that I'm doing, or he's talking about you or Koopy and folks like that. And again, I don't think he's ashamed of it or anything. It's just, I think as you get older, you have more skills.
Yeah, it doesn't come up as much. Like I just took that proofreading course thing. And there was 2 big tests you have to pass. Both I had to do twice to pass. But I know I know somebody who took it 7 times and doesn't seem to have any kind of learning disability. So I had moments of like, can I do this? But also based on this, how much challenging it is for other people too. I feel like, well.
Would it be fair to say it was a bigger deal in school than it is now as an adult? And what I mean by your peers.
Yes. I don't think anyone cares.
I think, again, it's some of the perception of things, and there's still that competition in school and things.
Anything now, it's just leftover stuff from childhood in my head.
I can see that. I think I see a difference too in Cooper in that, and you can tell me I'm wrong, but it's more widely accepted across the board.
Yeah, well, more people have heard of it, for sure. And now, when I was a kid, like I probably have that part, which is kind of the math part to it. But
the dyscalculia.
Yeah, but they didn't test me for that, or they didn't know about that. That wasn't like a thing. They just said, oh, like when I was bad at math, they were just kind of like, I don't know, I guess it's part of it. But now I feel like there's more subcategories than I were when I was a kid.
Yeah. So they have the dysgraphia, which is the handwriting, which you and Koopy have, and they have the dyscalculia. They're still not as well known or as supported, but people are more aware of it than they were.
So I feel like dyslexia in general, either you think it's just a thing that people say, like a jokey thing, like, I missed that word. I must have dyslexia today. Or you actually know what it is, but it's not, I don't see much of a stigma against it.
No, I think it was a harder thing when we were kids and when Dad was a kid. I do think there's more acceptance of it.
I guess it was a little bit like, oh, does that mean you're dumb?
Yes, because Dad had that.
Yeah. And I had that. I don't think Koopy has that he's dumb.
No.
Though I don't think he thinks he's dumb in terms of like, can he understand concepts and things like that? But I do think he probably has something about, shouldn't speak for him, but I do feel like he has something about, which probably comes to every dyslexic, like how long will it take me to get this, or how much longer will this, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
He probably has something about that.
Yeah. Maybe a little more hesitant to start something new.
Maybe. He did great this year in school, so I don't know.
He still uses all of his supports, though, too, and everything, correct?
He does. I didn't even know this, but I guess they can follow you all the way out of college. They can follow you into jobs and stuff. Your accommodations?
Sort of. There's 2. There's the 504 that only covers up to 12th grade.
Okay.
And then there is another section that's for work placement. So the plan from school can't follow you all the way through, but you can get if you go to the school and say, this is what I need, they can approve it. And then,
Yeah.
because that's under the American Disabilities Act.
Okay.
But the 504 plan and the IEP only are from K to 12. But yes, he can all the way through jobs and everything else, get those accommodations and stuff.
Yeah. So he had that. We thought we were able to get him. I didn't have to get him retested. Thank goodness. I just had to show our paperwork from high school. And then that went with him and he uses it. And basically it's just standard on stuff I had, untimed, quiet room, that kind of stuff. And he did fine. And I had that in college too. And I didn't use it all the time, just in certain cases. I assume that will be the same with him.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the whole purpose of services and accommodations, is to get you to a point where you can do it on as much as you can. And there are certain accommodations you'll always have to have. Like you say you're a slower reader, so you're going to need that extra time.
Right.
But, there are other services and supports. You're like, I got that now. I've got that.
Yeah.
So is there a strength that you think dyslexia gave you?
Well, I don't know if this is my personality or this is because of the way I had intervention, but I'm hyper organized.
Yeah, I was going to say, because things are going to take you time, you are very planned and very organized. And I think that is part of your strategy.
I also, a couple things. I don't have perfectionism in the realm of anything, learning something new. I'm fine with it failing a few times. I'm used to that. So, and like perseverance, determination, top notch.
Yeah, you're very driven.
But I don't get dissuaded from the goal very easily.
No, when you lock in on something, you're pretty locked in.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's academic or athletic or whatever. Yeah.
I will say, I think I say the same thing from Dad, you, and Cooper, and that is the social piece. I think all three of you, because the reading was so hard, your social skills are phenomenal. And you can come into a room and engage with people really easily and make those connections.
That's true. That goes back to high school a little bit. I remember being upset. I didn't have a thing. I still don't like this part about me. I don't have a thing that I excel in. So I'm not good at athletics. I'm not good at art. I'm not good at academics. So there's not like one strength that I could be like, well, I can't do this, but I'm a bang up artist or whatever. Like I can't do that. So I do remember Dad telling me in high school, but you could talk to anybody. You can talk to anybody.
So I think you're knocking yourself a little there.
Probably.
Because I think you have those intangible skills that a lot of us wish that we did and could have. You are excellent at research. If I ever need something fast, you are.
Problem solving. Yes. You got a problem, I'm going to find out a way to solve it.
I mean,
that's true.
That you think out of the box. And that I do attribute to your dyslexia, because you had to think out of the box to get things. Your social skills are phenomenal. And you take care of people like nobody else. So I think you knock yourself a little there.
Yeah, but it's not like as a kid, that's not something you could like look around.
No, that's part of being a kid and growing up. You're comparing yourself until you find your comfort zone.
Right.
Do you have any advice for anybody who is in like your situation where you're kind of in that middle, where you're the child and the mom?
I guess I would say, in terms of being the mom, I would say trust your gut to what your kid needs. Even with all the testing, you're going to be able to tell what he or she needs. Obviously, get that expert opinion, but marry it with what you think, especially in the public school system. Don't let them tell you otherwise. In my marriage, I'm not usually the one who's got to be told to calm down. Let me put it that way.
Yes, this is true.
But in those meetings, Matt will put his hand on me. Like, okay, we got it. Okay, relax.
Because you're going in as the pit bull.
Correct. And I didn't care if they liked me or not. So I would say, as a parent, mother, whatever, it's kind of like what they say about women in health, like be your best advocate, be their best advocate. So I would say that for that. I guess in terms of middle life, as just someone having dyslexia, really they probably already know this, which is just play to your strengths. So I really think there.
Okay. Anything as a child of a dyslexic, how do you support Dad?
I don't take over. So when he has a problem and he wants help with computer, like today he was trying to do something with his taxes on the computer, I don't do it. I just sit with him and say, let's figure out, we'll sit together and do it. Because he's not really looking for me to do it.
No, he's looking for the help.
He's looking for the help. And, he's 80 something. So it's not like he's intuitive on this stuff. But also just having someone, in this case, he's probably had many people step in and just do it. That's not his whole life. He doesn't really want anybody to step in and do it.
No,
he just
doesn't.
wanted to do it, but he needed a little extra something. And so I know that feeling. So in terms of helping Dad, I don't solve the problem in so much as give it to me. I'm more like, well, let's just talk about this and see what it is you really want, and then we can help you.
Yeah, I think you do that with everybody, though. I think that's your approach to everybody is what is it that you really want and how can we solve it?
Right. Let's back into what you want.
Yep. So is there something I missed and I didn't ask you that you want others to know?
I think that people don't really talk about the emotional side, what it does to your psyche enough. I think anytime you look up anything, it's just about how to get through the skills, how to get your kid to take the SATs or whatever that kind of stuff is, who to help your kid learn X, Y, and Z, or how to help you. How can you manage this, whatever you're.
Right. It's very academic focused.
Correct. I don't think anyone talks about the mental side of it enough. And I've actually looked for that because I wanted to see if I identified as an adult dyslexic, like what that was. And I couldn't find any resources for that. You see on Instagram sometimes they'll be like, if you're a child of a narcissist, then you X by blah, 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 blah. Like I was kind of looking for that one time for dyslexic and to see what it did to me emotionally or what parts I connect with. And I can't find that.
And I agree. I haven't really found that. I find the piece where they talk about people with dyslexia have higher rates of anxiety.
Sure.
But I don't find more about that emotional kind of functioning piece.
Right. And I do think that's really big. I think if anything right now, that's the stuff that still lingers, is the stuff about not feeling smart enough, worthy enough. I don't have a spot, a thing that I'm good at, that kind of stuff. And I haven't ever found anything to. I do think that played into my eating disorder too. The dyslexia.
A control issue kind of thing?
No, I think it was more like I couldn't do a good job at school. I couldn't do a good job in the athletic field. I couldn't do a good job in art or whatever. But I could look the way that society wanted me.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
It gave me a way to fit in. So I would like to, I've already unwrapped, I've done, therapy and work on the eating disorder, but I think it plays in more than I realize.
Yeah, I think they're connected when you put it like that.
Yeah. By nature, I've always been a little self-reflective. And so that is definitely something I would like to unravel more. How the dyslexia stuff plays into my current habits and thoughts and things like that, I guess.
Yeah, because I think those are just things that you carry with you always. So from my perspective, I have things in childhood related to the ADHD that wasn't diagnosed.
Right.
And I still find my brain can get tied up in some of those things, especially in the social emotional piece of it.
Right.
And I have to kind of walk myself off the ledge every now and then.
Well, you were brought up in the 80s where it wasn't like there wasn't really mental health care. So
no.
And people said shit all the time that was like somewhat harmful or was going to stick in your head as something you would remember over and over and over. So
just as everybody does, but especially when it's your weakness, you perseverate on that thing that somebody else kind of called out you thought you were hiding in a way.
Right.
So yeah.
So I guess I would like to see more talk or communication about that part of it. I actually think that part lasts longer than anything else because once you get your coping skills, you can navigate life pretty easily.
The hardest part in the beginning is getting those skills to decode and encode and all that. But the real hard piece all through life is what you're talking about.
Yeah. I think Dad talked about that too.
Yeah, he did.
He figured out his own coping skills. He got the diagnosis and was like, oh man, I'm not done. But all that other stuff that comes with that, I don't know how much he was able to resolve.
I think it still plays on him. And I know he mentioned that he still to this day won't get up in front of a crowd and read.
Oh yeah.
No. He'll riff. Sure. He'll get you going, but he won't. He doesn't do presentations or things like that because
I won't do that either.
Yeah, he relates that back to all those years ago, sitting in elementary school, being asked to read in front
Yeah.
of class.
Yep. It definitely makes me, I'm not very comfortable with standing out.
Mhm.
I don't like to stand out. Not necessarily, I don't necessarily conform 100% either, but I'm not into like.
And no, I would not call you a conformist. No. Thank you so much for coming and talking about this. And I love you.
Love you too.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Literacy Untangled. If you loved this episode as much as I did, head on over and rate and subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you want to continue the conversation or share your takeaways, head on over to our Instagram at Literacy Untangled and comment on your favorite part. I can't wait to hang out with you again soon. Bye!